Thanks to the increase in conspiracy theories in recent times, many studies have been performed to determine why some people believe the strange things that they do, and the results aren't all that surprising. It seems that the psychology behind these beliefs is that once someone starts to believe a theory is correct, it's much harder to convince them otherwise, since they choose to believe what they want, even when confronted with evidence to the contrary. It comes as no surprise that nuclear technology has become a topic of discussion amongst conspiracy theorists, since it's one of the most destructive forces on the planet and can do a lot of damage if used irresponsibly. The truth is that the first ever nuclear test was performed on the 16th of July, 1945. The chosen site was an area about 200 miles south of Los Alamos, New Mexico, known as Jornada del Muerto. The device in question was called Gadget, and it resulted in an explosion 18.6 kilotons that rocked the New Mexico desert at 5:30 a.m. Observers who had attended the event were knocked off their feet by the resulting energy wave. Asphalt was instantly turned into green glass, and people living as far away as 200 miles from the blast site reported hearing and seeing the explosion. One witness, who was 150 miles away, reported that the sky lit up as if it was daylight, while a ranger who was the same distance away said that he saw a flash of flames followed by the sound of the explosion and the resulting smoke. A pilot who was airborne over Albuquerque said that he saw the explosion and that he almost mistook it for the rising sun. The sight startled him, and when he radioed air traffic control to report what he had seen, they simply told him not to fly to the south. Since the test, known as the Trinity Test, was successful, it meant that the atomic bomb was ready to be used, and the rest is history. But not everyone is as certain, as conspiracy theorists have now started claiming that all atomic weapons are fake. One man, Owen Benjamin, has revealed his belief that the weapons are spurious by stating that the cameras used to film test footage over the years should have been vaporized by the explosions. He states that since entire buildings disappear in the wake of an atomic explosion, the cameras couldn't have possibly survived, and therefore he feels that the footage shown to the public has been faked by the government. He goes on to assert that the bombing on Hiroshima and Nagasaki never happened, and that those regions never experienced the nuclear fallout that destroyed so many lives, adding that, quote, the whole world is in on it. Others were quick to jump on the bandwagon and agreed with Benjamin, further pointing out that not only had the cameras survived, but the film used to record the explosions had suffered no ill effects, which they see as impossible. This goes directly against another popular narrative held by conspiracy theorists that the thousands of nuclear tests conducted all over the world over the years are destroying the Earth and contributing to the problem of global warming. Luckily, not everyone was as quick to take these claims seriously, and many social media users responded with proof that the tests were real and that the cameras used to film them could survive the blasts. They pointed to the fact that these cameras were usually placed as far as 10,000 feet away from ground zero, and as an added precaution were encased in steel boxes that contained 2.5-inch lead shields. This meant that the cameras and their operators were completely safe, away from the explosions, and were able to record the terrifying images, since they were usually about 10 to 18 feet off the ground, ensuring that the resulting dust cloud couldn't get in the way. For centuries, people have been searching for a cure-all, a type of medication or mysterious substance that would cure any disease, ailment, or medical condition. But none have ever been successful, and it's fair to say that due to the many different maladies that exist, it'll never be found. Some have likened such a cure to the mythical fountain of youth that would grant anyone who drank from it eternal youth. While most of us would consider claims that such a cure has been found with extreme skepticism, there are thousands of people who believe it does exist in the form of a new wave of scientific healing called Medbed. The name is short for either medical bed or meditation bed, and these devices have started to grow in popularity over the past few years. Some claim that it contains secret technology that only a few people are privy to, such as the deep state and the super wealthy. Others believe that the beds make use of extraterrestrial technology that somehow made its way to Earth, and is now being used to relieve patients of all kinds of conditions that would cost thousands of dollars to treat otherwise. But even those who believe in the technology and who have used the beds on many occasions are in disagreement about what the beds actually are. Some feel that it cures patients through relaxation and meditation, while others believe that they have healing properties that can rid a patient of almost any disease. Unsurprisingly, these claims have further resulted in even more outlandish speculation, such as that pharmaceutical companies will soon become obsolete, since everyone will have a medbed in their house and will have no need to visit doctors or take any type of medication. It's also been claimed that the beds can diagnose a patient within seconds after they lay down, or that they're so miraculous that patients can regrow missing limbs simply by lying on one of the beds for a short while. But as outlandish as these claims are, they pale in comparison to a claim made by a group of conspiracy theorists that are based in Dallas, Texas. They've stated their belief that ex-US President John F. Kennedy is still alive and looking younger and better than ever, since he's making use of a medbed, which has also dramatically lengthened his life. One Canadian conspiracy theorist has predicted that medbeds will eventually be available to everyone in Canada for free, but not many people are taking her seriously, since she also claims to be the rightful queen of Canada. The false hype around these beds has resulted in some people attempting to construct their own medbeds with the use of copper wiring, such as the followers of a Japanese conspiracy group called Yamato Q. Then there are the claims that the US government has known about medbeds for a long time, but they've kept them a secret from the public so that they can be used for members of the military, the wealthy, and prominent politicians. Tesla Biohealing, a company that sells medbeds, claims that they can be used to cure common afflictions such as asthma and the flu, and that they've been proven to be effective against more serious diseases, such as terminal cancers of many kinds. No proof has been offered that the medbeds can cure even the simplest of conditions, such as the common cold, but the theory continues to gain followers and shows no signs of slowing down. It should be noted that the company is in no way associated with Tesla Inc., the automotive company. The last thing that most of us would think about when discussing conspiracy theories is architecture. But a group of people on the internet are making claims that certain buildings around the world are not modern creations, but the remnants of a civilization that existed long ago, which was wiped from the history books on purpose. While this theory is very much online-based these days, it originated in Russia in the 1970s and has only gained traction ever since. The empire in question is called Tartarian, which is said to have stretched from Siberia through Asia to Mongolia and Afghanistan. The people who lived there were referred to as Tartars, which is said to have meant barbarian, despite their civilization supposedly being sophisticated and technologically advanced. As for their architecture, according to conspiracy theorists, we can still see a lot of it today, but we're blissfully unaware that these buildings were created by them centuries ago. It's said that a series of massive mud floods hit the area at some point, burying the buildings and the Tartars in the process. One such building is Notre Dame in Paris, France, which some people believe was used by the Tartars as a sound bath to reduce stress, improve the quality of their sleep, and help them focus on whatever tasks they were engaged in. The Taj Mahal in India is another example of a Tartarian building, as is the Chicago Federal Building, as well as the Singer Building, which was the tallest building in the world for a short while, standing 612 feet tall. In modern times, these buildings that had been buried by the mud floods were unearthed and re-erected in different parts of the world, with modern architects claiming the work as their own, according to the theory. Some of these buildings are rumored to be over 1,000 years old, such as the Giza Pyramids or even the Capitol Building in Washington. Theorists claim that these two buildings were created by the same people, and that they were then repurposed, which is a strange idea since it would surely be much harder to move a building thousands of miles rather than just create a new one. Other structures like the Great Wall of China are also believed to have been built by the Tartars, the wall's purpose being to keep Chinese people out of their territory for reasons unknown. It would seem that any building that has ornate architecture in the Gothic or Baroque style, for example, or is unusually tall or large, was at some point part of the Tartarian Empire, including temporary buildings that were created for the 1915 World Fair, which was held in Chicago. Some conspiracy theorists have even suggested that certain bombing campaigns during the Second World War were actually performed to wipe out the last known remnants of the Tartarian Empire, and that these buildings are being repurposed since their architecture somehow enables the government to harness free energy. The government is easily the main target when it comes to conspiracy theories. Some people believe that they're adding mind-controlling chemicals to our water supply, that they're hiding the cure for some of the worst-known diseases in order to make more money, or that they've been working with extraterrestrials for a very long time but refuse to admit it. But the US government is also said to have suppressed an economic reform known as the National Economic Security and Reformation Act, NESARA for short, which would have seen all debt wiped out, and if it was successful, could have ended poverty once and for all. During the 1990s, the US faced a massive crisis as far as the national debt was concerned, and it was mutually agreed that something needed to be done to turn the problem around. The guidelines for the solution were that every American citizen should enjoy economic freedom, and that systems such as debt and unfair taxation should be completely eliminated. This gave rise to the idea of NESARA, which would reset the US's economic policies, eradicate debt, and introduce a new transparent financial system that would protect the country's citizens' privacy while promoting economic stability and growth. While the plan seemed a good one on the surface, many people were dead set against it since it threatened massive changes to the way that they were used to living their lives and America's financial future. Nevertheless, there was a great push for the reform to be adopted, but when it became obvious that the plan would not be feasible, it became a movement rather than an economic proposal. The initiative eventually died out, but many people held fast to the idea, and before long it became a full-fledged conspiracy theory, with some people claiming that it was actually adopted by the government, but was being kept a secret from the public. Some claim that George W. Bush and Donald Trump were pivotal in keeping this information a secret, and when discussions moved from people's living rooms to internet forums, the stage was set for conspiracy theorists to have their say. One theorist who had a major role to play in these conspiracies is a woman named Shiny Goodwin, who was known as the Dove of Oneness. She suggested that all debt would eventually be wiped out or forgiven, and before long she had amassed a good number of followers who shared her opinions. Harvey Francis Barnard is said to be the creator of the NESARA proposal, and while his intention was to rid America of its woeful economic state at the time, he could never have foreseen that it would become a conspiracy theory many years later, and that it would still be discussed in the 21st century. As for George W. Bush, it's said that he purposefully shelved the proposal, since it directly clashed with his economic and political objectives, though no proof has ever been found that this is the case. Other theorists were adamant that when Donald Trump became president of the United States, he would take another look at NESARA and likely revitalize the proposal. But as we now know, this never happened, and again this was merely a theory with no proof attached to it. In 2022, a woman named Karen Y. King Liu told the British Columbia Supreme Court that her house was erroneously sold to the bank after she fell behind on her mortgage. She claimed that the courtmaster had failed to take NESARA into account, and that her debt should have been forgiven thanks to the new legislation that was implemented by the New World Order. Unsurprisingly, her objections fell on deaf ears, since NESARA was never implemented, but this gives us a good insight into the damage that these conspiracy theories can do, especially when people aren't aware of all the facts. The music world is full of conspiracy theories, such as the suggestion of the existence of the 27 Club, which is made up of several prominent musicians and actors, such as Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, Amy Winehouse, Kurt Cobain, and Anton Yelchin, all of whom passed away when they were 27 years old. It's said that this age carries a curse with it, though most of the members of the club lost their lives thanks to unhealthy and chaotic lifestyles that accompanied their massive amounts of fame and fortune. But it isn't just modern musicians who are said to be plagued by such a curse. Some of the most prominent composers of the 19th and 20th centuries are said to have also succumbed to a curse known as the Curse of the Ninth. The idea of the curse first came to be during the late Romantic period, which lasted from 1851 to 1920. According to the theory, successful and famous composers would lose their lives soon after completing their Ninth Symphony, and many people still believe that the curse really existed. Not only did some members of the public believe in the curse, Some composers also bought into it, including Gustav Mahler, who quickly started obsessing over the possibility that he would lose his life after writing his Ninth Symphony. He was aware that both Beethoven and Anton Bruckner had supposedly been victims of the curse, and in an effort to avoid being the next victim, he devised a plan. He had already completed his Eighth Symphony and was set to release another, but when the time came, he refused to refer to it as a symphony. Believing he had foiled the curse, he then started writing his next symphony, which would technically have been his 10th, but soon after it was completed, he contracted pneumonia and passed away. After composer, Arnold Schoenberg later wrote about the curse, stating that musicians who completed their Ninth Symphonies were now closer to the hereafter than other people, but could still offer no plausible explanation, stating that they were simply afflicted by something that they were not meant to be privy to before completing their 10th. But the theory isn't without its flaws. Many classical music enthusiasts have pointed out that some very well-known composers went on to compose their 10th symphony without any tragedy befalling them. One example being Franz Joseph Haydn, who wrote as many as 104. Leif Segerstad went on to compose 327 symphonies in his lifetime, proving that there's no such thing as the curse of the ninth. Dmitri Shostakovich composed a total of 15 symphonies before passing away, and Heitor Villa-Lobos completed 12 without being afflicted by the curse. Mozart, one of the most prominent composers that ever lived, composed 41 symphonies in total and suffered no adverse effects after completing his ninth. Furthermore, some composers passed away after completing their ninth, but it was then discovered that they'd written several more, and if the curse was in fact real, they should have lost their lives much sooner. As with the 27 Club, things aren't always as they seem, and what some people consider to be a curse is sometimes simply a matter of coincidence. With the sheer number of composers that existed at the time, it isn't all that unusual that several passed away after completing their ninth symphonies. The Chivo Man, also known as the Billywhack Monster, is considered by most people to be a fantastical tale of a mythical cryptid, but others are adamant that it really does exist, and that it's the result of experiments carried out beneath a dairy farm in Santa Paula, in Ventura County by order of the US government. The Billywhack Dairy and Ranch was established by August Rubel in 1924, after he moved to the area from Zurich, Switzerland 2 years earlier, after serving in the American Field Service between 1917 and 1919. Some people claim that he was also part of the Office of Strategic Services, which would eventually become the CIA. According to conspiracy theorists, he was ordered by the government to create some kind of super soldier, and to accomplish this, he started performing hideous experiments beneath the dairy, which had a series of rooms and tunnels running beneath it. At some point, one of these experiments, a half-human, half-goat creature, managed to escape and started wreaking havoc in the surrounding area, with many residents claiming to have seen it or had close encounters with it. Once the monster had broken free and could not be contained, Rubel decided to flee, according to the theory, and eventually passed away under mysterious circumstances while still doing secret work for the OSS. But we know this claim to be false, since he actually returned to Tunisia, where he joined the military once again, and lost his life while driving an ambulance, which unfortunately hit a landmine. Nonetheless, many people who live in the area insist that the monster is real, even if it isn't the result of a government cover-up. Those who claim to have seen it describe it as being about 10 feet tall with white fur covering its entire body. It has ram's horns on its head and is said to be immensely strong. Some people believe it lives in the mountains and hills in the area, while others think it may still be holed up in the tunnels under the dairy, only coming out to hunt and cause havoc. Students from the Santa Paula High School have reported being approached by the creature on many occasions, and other witnesses claim to have seen it lift massive boulders over its head before throwing them at cars. Others reported having terrifying encounters with the creature that suddenly leaped into the road in front of them, and then started banging on the hoods of their cars with its massive hairy fists. In the 1950s, a young boy arrived home with scratch marks covering his arms and back. When asked what had happened to him, he stated that he had a run-in with the Billywhack Monster while he was walking near the dairy and was lucky to escape with his life. A group of hitchhikers who were in the area in 1964 claimed to have seen the creature who tormented them for several hours before they were able to flee to safety. This story was apparently published in a local newspaper. That same year, a different boy had to be restrained after deputies found him heading toward the dairy with a sharpened blade in his hand. He later told them that he was on his way to find the creature and put an end to it once and for all. While the legend conjures up images of an abandoned building that contains a hideous monster, historical records show that Reuben's wife remained at the dairy after his passing, eventually remarrying a man named Edwin Berger. When she eventually passed away, Berger continued to run the dairy while living on the property, and never made any mention of a creature lurking beneath the building. But the legend remains and will be spoken about for many more years to come. Quentin Tarantino is undoubtedly one of the greatest directors of his time. He's brought us iconic films such as Pulp Fiction, Reservoir Dogs, the Kill Bill movies, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, to name but a few. Tarantino has a unique style of directing, and most fans are able to recognize his work immediately. It's because of this unique style that a theory eventually came to light, which suggested that all of his movies take place in the same fictional universe, a rumor that was later confirmed by the director himself. But once this theory was confirmed, it gave rise to many more conspiracy theories regarding characters in some of his movies. The first starts in the movie Pulp Fiction, when a hitman named Vince Vega is asked by his boss, Marcellus Wallace, to accompany his wife, Mia, on a strictly platonic night out. During dinner in a restaurant, Mia tells Vince that she was once part of a failed pilot for a show called Fox Force 5, in which her character would tell a joke during every episode. She describes the 5 main characters in the show as follows. The group's leader was blonde, the kung fu master was Japanese, one was an African-American demolition expert, one was a seductress, and the last one was her character, who specialized in sharpened blades. The pilot was never made, and Fox Force 5 never saw the light of day. But according to fans, it was then used as the basis for the Kill Bill movies, since the characters are uncannily similar to the ones described by Mia. Another theory surrounding Pulp Fiction is that terrible things are about to occur whenever Vince Vega visits a restroom. The first instance is after their night out when he goes to the bathroom to freshen up, but when he emerges, he finds Mia lying on the floor unconscious from an overdose. In another scene, he's in a restaurant restroom when the establishment is held up by a Bonnie and Clyde-style duo. And finally, he's tasked with staking out the apartment of Butch Coolidge, a boxer who double-crossed Marcellus. While in the apartment, he decides to use the bathroom, and unbeknownst to him, Butch returns to collect his watch. Realizing that someone is in the bathroom, he grabs a firearm that's been left on a counter and fires at Vega as he walks out, ending his life. Then there's the theory that 2 characters from different movies are related. Vince Vega is said to be the brother of Mr. Blonde from Reservoir Dogs, better known as Mr. Blonde. Furthermore, it's been suggested that the events in Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs take place on the same day, which means that the 2 brothers lost their lives on the same date. Lastly, there's the burning question of what was inside the briefcase that we see in Pulp Fiction. All we as the audience ever see is a glow emitting from the case, leading to much speculation. Some people have suggested it contains Marcellus's soul, which he sold to the devil in exchange for wealth and power. Early in the movie, we can only see the back of Marcellus's head, which has a band-aid on it. It's been theorized that this is where his soul was removed from, and that the combination to the briefcase is 666. There are many more theories concerning Quentin Tarantino movies, some of which have been confirmed while others remain mere speculation, and chances are very good that many more theories will come to light in the future. The famous composer Mozart had a long and prosperous career in classical musical circles during the 18th century. He was born in Austria in 1756 and eventually passed away in 1791 at the age of 35. The official cause of his passing was ruled to be cerebral hemorrhaging and bronchopneumonia, but not everyone is convinced, as historians have been speculating about the event for many years, giving rise to some very strange conspiracy theories. One factor that's given rise to this theory is that Mozart seemed to have predicted his passing. For the last 6 months of his life, he became convinced that someone was trying to poison him, and that he would pass away after completing a requiem that was commissioned by a mysterious stranger. He passed away before completing the requiem, and according to an article in a Berlin newspaper, his body had swollen up, causing many people to believe that he was indeed poisoned. If this was the case, someone had to be held responsible, and many historians feel that Antonio Salieri, an Italian composer, was the culprit. When Salieri was 73 years old, he made a failed attempt on his own life, claiming that he was the one who poisoned Mozart, but since he was close to insanity at this time, most people were quick to dismiss his claims. Then in 1861, German poet and philosopher G.F. Dahmer made the sensational claim that the composer's life was ended by the Masons. He claimed that Mozart's opera, entitled The Magic Flute, contained Masonic secrets and that they retaliated by orchestrating his demise. This theory was further supported by German doctor Dieter Kerner, though this theory has now been all but dismissed in modern times, since he was visited by many doctors during his final days and showed no signs of being poisoned. Mozart claimed that he was being poisoned with aqua tofana, a mixture of arsenic, belladonna or deadly nightshade, and lead, which would have caused severe symptoms such as a burning sensation in his mouth and stomach. He would have also experienced muscle spasms and a blue line on his gums, none of which was ever present. While theories about his passing are still very prevalent, we know that Mozart wasn't poisoned as he had feared, but this is only one of many theories regarding the composer. It's been said that he was buried in an unmarked grave after squandering all the money he'd earned from his compositions, but the reality is that he was buried at the St. Mark's Communal Cemetery in Vienna. At the time, it was common practice for a grave to be reused after 10 years, which was also the case with Mozart's grave. When his wife Constance tried to visit his grave 17 years after his passing, it was found that his remains had been removed, and since the original gravedigger had passed away, they were never recovered and remain missing to this day. Other theories suggest that he took his own life, passing away after eating some pork that hadn't been cooked properly, or that he overdosed on mercury salts, which is now often used as a pesticide, though it could have been used as a disinfectant at that time. We may never know the true cause of Mozart's passing, but researchers continue to study the event in hopes that we will arrive at a definitive answer one day. The International Space Station is a marvel of modern technology. It was designed by scientists and engineers from several different countries between 1984 and 1993, including the US, Japan, and Canada, and several European countries. The idea to build the station came about thanks to the idea that a human could live in space. Russian theoretician Konstantin Tsiolkovsky suggested that an orbiting structure could be created and that it could use sunlight to power the station and to grow food for those living in it. Hermann Nordung is credited with the design of the station, which he called Wunrad, or living wheel, since his design included a rotating circular structure. The rotation was meant to create artificial gravity for those on the station. The first official designs were created in the 1950s, when it was suggested that the station could be used as a fueling station for craft that were being sent to the moon. Before long, the required parts were being manufactured for assembly in space, which was completed in 1998. The first occupants entered the station on the 2nd of November in 2000, and since then it's housed many astronauts and continues to serve as a science laboratory. But as is so often the case, conspiracy theorists are claiming that most of these facts are false, and that the public is being lied to by the governments of the world. A video started making its way across several different social media platforms in 2023, showing astronauts aboard the ISS. But many people are claiming that the footage has been faked, and that they have proof of these claims. The theory is that special effects were used to make it look as though the astronauts were in space, when they were actually still on Earth. Theorists point to certain points in the video, claiming that the astronauts can be seen pulling at wires attached to their suits, and that the wires have been removed using digital software. They also state that the harnesses being worn by the astronauts were completely unnecessary, and were only ever included on their uniforms to give the impression that they were working in a zero-gravity environment. Others believe that the footage was shot underwater, and claim to be able to see air bubbles floating around the astronauts, which would not be the case if they were actually in space. Luckily, these claims are easy to explain away. When an astronaut is seen tugging at invisible wires, it's likely that they're adjusting a piece of equipment, such as a microphone or headset cable, that's situated behind their back. As for the air bubbles that can be seen, these are likely particles of dust or ice that float past the camera, something that's very common in space. As proof of this, a spokesman made a comparison between the footage and the way air bubbles behave in a liquid. In the footage, the particles float past the camera in a perfectly straight line, which is never the case for air bubbles traveling through a liquid. Furthermore, the idea that the government would go to such lengths to convince people that there are astronauts on the ISS when there aren't is laughable, not to mention the amount of money that would have been spent to create this illusion. The thought that life could exist on the planet Venus would seem to most of us to be ludicrous to even consider. The fact that the average temperature on the planet is around 860 degrees Fahrenheit is enough to put this theory to rest in the minds of most people. But that hasn't stopped conspiracy theorists from claiming that it's inhabited, one of which is a Russian astronomer. Leonid Senfomality, who works at the Space Research Institute of Russia's Academy of Sciences, has authored a paper after examining photos taken in 1982 by the Venera 13 probe. Upon closer inspection of the many images sent back to Earth by the probe, he noticed some very unusual and unsettling objects that in his mind could only mean one thing, that there's life on Venus. He stated that several of the images contained a strange disc-shaped object, a black flap, and another that resembles a scorpion. He noticed that the shapes were present in photos that were taken from different angles, and therefore could not have been the result of a problem with the cameras. In his own words, he asserts the following, saying, quote, "What if we forget about the current theories about the non-existence of life on Venus? Let's boldly suggest that the object's morphological features would allow us to say that they are living." He adds that the objects, which he estimates to be between 4 and 19 inches in size, were present in some photos while they were absent in others, suggesting that they were moving around when the photos were taken. He also pointed out that they seemed to change shape at times, and that he believes they disappeared and reappeared without explanation. Writing about the disc-shaped object, he dismissed the idea that it could be part of the probe, since none of the parts had become dislodged during the mission. He estimates that it was about 13 inches in size. According to his observations, the disc then divided itself into several smaller parts, and just a few moments later, a bright object of the same size suddenly appeared. As for the black flap, he estimated it to be about 2.3 inches in size. It then wrapped itself around a section of the probe called the measuring cone, only to disappear a few moments later. He also has no explanation for what the object may be. Then there's the object that's shaped like a scorpion. He noted that the probe had been working for about 90 minutes before it appeared, and at first assumed that it was part of the probe that had broken off. But since the probe continued with its task for another hour afterward, he realized that this wasn't the case. He claimed that the object appeared for about 59 minutes into the footage, and that it had completely disappeared by the 119th minute. He once again dismissed the possibility that this was part of the probe, since no parts had broken off during this time and since the object then suddenly disappeared, suggesting to him that it could move around under its own volition, like an animal on Earth. He believes that the objects in the images didn't have time to clear the area before the probe landed, and suggested that many more of these creatures may exist on Venus, but that they were able to scramble to safety before the probe captured them with its camera. It's a wild theory that will almost be impossible to prove or disprove until a lot more research is done, and until then, all we can do is speculate. The first ever Disney movie was released in 1937, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. There are many characters in the Disney universe, all of whom are from different times and places, but some fans have managed to find some connections between them. According to a fan theory, it all starts with Cronus and Rhea, the king and queen of the Titans. They're the parents of the Greek gods Zeus, Demeter, Hades, and Poseidon. All of these characters make an appearance in the Disney movie Hercules. In the same movie, we meet both Hera and Zeus, who are the mother and father of Hercules, who later marries Megara. Poseidon also marries a goddess, Amphitrite, and they have a child together. It was Triton from The Little Mermaid. Triton and Athena went on to have various offspring, including Ariel, who then goes on to meet and fall in love with Eric. Together, the two end up having Melody. And one theory managed to figure out that Eric's ancestor was Snow White, due to the hereditary black hair. But there's a 300-year difference between the lives of these characters. Fans managed to trace Eric's origins even further, believing that his father related to another Disney film, Cinderella. This made Eric and Kit cousins, because both of their fathers are brothers and are descendants of Snow White and Prince Florian. Ella's origins were then put into focus. Her parents are unnamed in the film, but are shown to us in different scenes. Her father was revealed in the first 10 minutes, and a storybook reveals her mother standing in a wedding dress. Ella's father was portrayed as a man with a large mustache, and the theorists connected him to Duke Weselton from Frozen. The Disney fan believes that the two are brothers, with the Duke being the youngest with a 3-year difference. It's suggested that these two brothers are the sons of Duke Adam and the Duchess Belle. This brings us to Beauty and the Beast. In the movie Frozen, the Duke is sent to Arendelle to trade, but this is obviously a failure, and since no one will accept him back home, he'll have to escape and flee to another place. So he packed up his things, including various heirlooms and a very lovely tea set, and headed to Great Britain with his son and granddaughter, Jane Porter from Tarzan. This is possibly why she looks so similar to Belle from Beauty and the Beast. We also see that the exact tea set appears in the film. There are some alternatives to this conspiracy theory as well. In Frozen, Rapunzel from Tangled makes a quick appearance. Fans have claimed that Rapunzel and Elsa's mothers look alike, maybe because they're sisters who married 2 different kings in 2 separate kingdoms. One of the daughters is subsequently born with the gift of healing, all because of the magic flower that we find in Tangled. The other has been born with the power to control ice and snow. Connections have also been found between Frozen and The Little Mermaid. In The Little Mermaid, Ariel explores a shipwreck in its opening scene. Where did that ship come from? Perhaps it's the one that Elsa's parents left and sank on following a rough storm. The same film also has ties to Tarzan. Theorists suggest that the king and queen of Arendelle actually survived the wreckage and went on to have a baby boy who would grow up to become Tarzan, making him, Elsa, and Anna siblings. There are various connections and cameos throughout the Disney world if one were to look for them. In 2016, Moana came to the TV screens. The movie centers around Moana, who was born on the island of Motunui. She's the daughter of the chief and inherited a love for voyaging from her past ancestors. She learns that Te Fiti's heart was stolen by a demigod, Maui, who had a shape-shifting ability. She sets out on a dangerous voyage to restore the heart, a glowing green pebble. She befriends the ocean water and the shapeshifter. Unbeknownst to Moana, her chicken friend, Hei had also boarded the canoe. Hei is a significant character in the film and plays the part of the bumbling rooster who's accident-prone and known as the village idiot on the island. The rooster is incredibly oblivious to his surroundings and even needs to be directed to food when pecking next to it. He gets easily distracted and continuously falls into the water. The living water saved him a few times, and so did both Maui and Moana. Hei is the center of this conspiracy. A fan theory took Reddit by storm about this dumb chicken. It's been suggested that the reason Hei survives all these random accidents is because he's on a mission. The mission is to protect Moana. It's believed that he's a guardian who was sent by the gods to help the young woman on her quest to restore the heart. Hei, the unintelligent rooster, may in fact be a demigod. There are a few events that prove this. The first is that at the beginning of the movie, the main character is a baby, which is when Hei initially shows up, yet years later he still looks exactly the same, meaning that he doesn't age. Another supporting factor is that the chicken follows the woman around everywhere. He may not appear very helpful, but there must be a reason why he survives. Additionally, Hei basically needs to be force-fed by Maui, who's trying to fatten him up. If he isn't being force-fed during his life, then how's he staying alive? Incredibly, even though the village is starving, the chicken never gets cooked up and eaten, and is protected by Moana. There are darker theories relating to this movie as well. One fan suggested that Moana is not actually alive throughout the film. The seed for this theory started when Moana asked the ocean for help, but was overcome by a storm. This leaves her stranded on an island where she meets Maui. It's believed that there's a barrier between the spiritual world and the real world. For Moana to end up on Maui's island, she would have to be deceased. Evidence for this conspiracy is that right after she's caught in the storm, the woman doesn't interact with another human being until she's brought back by Te Fiti. She also never gets seriously injured during her voyage, suggesting that she may exhibit some sort of supernatural resilience. The only time she appears to be injured is after colliding with a rock, but a Redditor explained that this is nothing more than a psychosomatic experience. The most vital piece of evidence for this conspiracy is that she's able to communicate with her deceased grandmother. She's only able to speak with her, though, once she passes through the storm or passes away. Adding to this is the fact that when the adventurers get to Te both Moana and Heihei are essentially resurrected, after which Maui states the chicken lives. The Toy Story franchise began in 1995. It starts with a normal human boy named Andy playing with his toys, including Mr. Potato Head, Slinky Dog, Rex, and his favorite Woody the cowboy. The toys are alive, but people don't know about them. Together, they embark on adventures and rescue missions. Later, Woody goes on to meet his counterpart, Jessie, a cowgirl who comes with Bullseye, her horse. Sometimes the movies end in tragedy or have a heartwarming conclusion. Other characters include humans like Sid, who lives next door, and Andy's mom. But this conspiracy focuses on Jessie, the yodeling cowgirl. She serves as the third most important character. She makes her first appearance in the second movie as the vintage pull-string cowgirl from the 1950s. She initially wanted to be treated as a collectible and not a toy, but this view changed when she became affiliated with the crew. The conspiracies start with Emily, Jessie's initial owner. Reddit users believe that Emily is actually Andy's mother, the valid owner of the cowgirl doll. This is supported by a scene in the first movie that shows Andy wearing a red cowboy hat, yet his favorite toy has a brown hat. The hat he's wearing is consistent with Jessie's color. This may indicate that Andy's headwear belonged to his mother, who matched with her favorite doll as a child. That hat was passed down from the mother to her son. Strangely, this conspiracy theory connects with Monsters, Inc. Conspiracy theorists jump into the release of the Monster movie, where a Jessie doll can be seen on the table of Boo's bedroom. Based on the timeline represented in these movies, it would then make sense that Boo is actually Andy's mother, according to the conspirators. But there are various holes in this particular branch. It's noted, though, that the Monsters, Inc. character does make a cameo appearance in Toy Story 4. But the conspiracy regarding Emily being Andy's mother seems plausible, since they have a striking resemblance, and the mother's name has never been revealed. This has been the only conspiracy theory relating to Disney and Pixar that's gained traction and may even be true. One theory also proposes that all the movies exist in one single universe. Bing Bong from Inside Out is a monster from Monsters, Inc. Boo is a witch. All the Disney characters are related, and the Cars wiped out humanity. Back in 2007, Disney presented the heartwarming movie Ratatouille. The plot follows the life of Remy, a rat, who lives in a French country with his brother, father, and their colony. Remy is inspired to be a gourmet chef, but finds himself in the wrong place at the wrong time, in the kitchen of a little old woman. After getting separated from his family, he goes on to control a chef in training, Alfredo Linguini, by pulling on his hair from underneath his chef's hat. The pair went on to become great cooks and even won the heart of a food critic, Anton Ego. While it may appear to just be a simple movie, fans have found some seriously odd conspiracy theories relating to it. It starts all the way at the beginning at the old lady's house. A Reddit user and conspiracy theorist pointed out some regular household objects in the woman's kitchen. The teapot, the stove knobs, the jars, a particular tap, translucent curtains, and a hanging fruit bowl. Strangely enough, all these objects are seen again much later in the movie. This time, it's the scene in Ego's memory after tasting the ratatouille that had just been prepared for him by a rat. The taste was so incredible that it took him right back to his mother's cooking. In this memory, we're met with the same teapot, the same stove knobs, jar, tap, curtains, and even the hanging fruit bowl. This eagle-eyed viewer pointed out each of these similarities and concluded that the old woman who chased Remy out of her house was the food critic's mother. But these conspiracies don't end there. Mundane Turnover 913 has another conspiracy. They suggest that Anton Ego and the famous chef Gusteau are actually brothers. The Redditor points back to the idea that Mabel, the old lady, is the mother of Ego. They refer back to all the similarities as previously discussed. But these similarities in the flashbacks don't particularly prove that Gusteau fits in here. Or does it? According to the user, an image of a man resembling the famous chef can be seen, except he doesn't have a mustache. It's proposed that this is actually the father of Gusteau, Mabel's late husband, and some likeness can also be seen when looking at the two purported brothers. They have the same eyes, hair, and same dark circles. These theorists believe that both brothers wanted to be in the cooking field, but Ego was terrible at cooking and couldn't keep up with his brother's success. So he moved to London, hence the English accent, and became a food critic so he could destroy his famous brother's reputation by giving him a bad review. Gusteau passed away of heartbreak. We later learn in the movie that this renowned chef was actually Linguini's father. The theorists also suggest that the chef had been having an affair with Renata, who was then expecting a child. She fled to America to avoid harming the chef's reputation even further, adding to the heartbreak. She'd been carrying Alfredo Linguini, hence his American accent. Another conspiracy theory has suggested that the famous chef actually had his own rat that controlled him from beneath his hat as well. While this sounds crazy, there's a bit of proof, where there is a picture of the chef on the cover of a magazine, and it also appears as though a rat is peeking out from the hat. It's possible that Ego found out he was a fraud, which meant that his brother wasn't a better cook, but was much more famous. This would allow room for bitterness. Their mother was so shocked by this that she cut all communication with Ego and blamed him for her son's passing, which is why there's no picture of him in the home. Captain Hook is the well-known villain and main antagonist of the 1953 Disney film Peter Pan. Hook is an elegant yet savage pirate and the captain of the Jolly Roger. He abandoned sailing the high seas so that he could exact his revenge against Peter Pan for chopping off his hand and feeding it to a hungry croc, who's also been in pursuit of the captain. While Pan seems to be a worthy opponent, Hook seems destined for failure, probably because his rival has the ability to fly, but also because his first mate, Mr. Smee, is incompetent. But according to some fan theories, Captain Hook may actually be a good guy in the story. In the original version of Peter Pan, Pan was immortal, and apparently the only one. According to the theory, he would venture back to Earth to collect children who would subsequently meet their demise. The supposed hero is often accompanied by fairies, who some have come to suggest are really pixies, the mischievous and evil kind. A Reddit user believes that Pan had made a deal with the pixies where he would gain immortality as long as he continued this deed. Captain Hook, according to the conspiracy theory, was not actually a pirate, but had uncovered the plot and attempted to stop it all. After realizing that he probably couldn't defeat Pan, he enlisted the help of the magical crocodile, who would offer him immortality for his hand. But there was another catch. Hook wasn't allowed to tell the children that Pan was collecting the truth until they joined his crew. However, since Hook was the only other immortal character who would need to find new crew members every now and again, it eventually led them to look like the pirates. This was great for Peter Pan, because now he had a legitimate reason to keep the lost boys away from Hook. The theory goes on to include Wendy. Wendy meets Pan when he comes floating into her window. She and her siblings end up floating away with him to the island. At the end of the movie, Wendy's father recognizes the ship. This meant that he could have been one of the lost boys who joined Hook. Hook then took him away from the island, somehow erased his memory, and went on to live a regular life after this. But this, of course, didn't come without consequence. Pan decided to get revenge and took the former Lost Boys' children, and the captain had been trying to rescue them throughout the movie. Unfortunately, he's defeated, but Pan decides to return them anyway. An alternative conspiracy theory states that Hook had actually once been a lost boy himself. In fact, he was the first one in Neverland. He and Pan soon became best friends but later parted ways, leaving the immortal kidnapper feeling abandoned. Hook grew up and later returned to Neverland as a much different person, one whom Pan viewed as evil. Reddit users added to this theory and explained that both the captain and his crew were actually all lost boys who grew up but never let go of their childhood dreams of being pirates. Most boys imagine becoming pirates when playing, at least at some point in their lives. Not only does this wild conspiracy theory paint Captain Hook as the good guy, but it also depicts Peter Pan as a kidnapper. The 2023 live-action remake of the children's movie also lends itself to this new conspiracy. Mary Poppins, the enigmatic central character of a book and movie of the same name, is a figure shrouded in mystery. A musical film, it chronicles the life of a magical nanny who mysteriously appears in London at the Banks family home to care for two misbehaving children, Michael and Jane. The nanny's arrival is prompted by the sudden departure of the children's previous nanny, leading the father, George, to place an advertisement in the newspaper. Intriguingly, the children also place their own ad, seeking a friendlier and more sympathetic nanny. The film and its magical character are the subjects of numerous intriguing conspiracies. One of the popular theories involves the world of Harry Potter. Fans have come to suggest that Mary is an incredibly powerful witch who's on the same level as Voldemort, or perhaps even Dumbledore. Evidence for this is supported by her ability to fly. Mary can also levitate objects using her umbrella, which is really a wand, exactly like Hagrid's umbrella wand. She's also so powerful that she doesn't even need to vocalize her spells. In this film and its sequel, Mary Poppins disappears and reappears in various locations, similar to the teleportations in Harry Potter, apparating and disapparating. Another supporting fact for this conspiracy is that Mary has a bottomless bag and is able to store and retrieve anything from it. This is similar to Hermione Granger's bag in the last two Harry Potter films. While the three friends are fleeing, she reveals that she'd put the undetectable extension charm on it, so that she could carry everything that they may need. This could be exactly what the nanny did if she was indeed a Hogwarts graduate and was an incredibly powerful witch. One of the scenes in the movie also connects the two worlds. While the nanny was cleaning up the children's bedroom, something familiar began to happen. The clothes fold themselves and pack themselves away, and even the beds are made by unseen forces. The children were instructed to pack the toys away themselves. This scene looks exactly like the one from the Wizarding World back at Ron Weasley's house. The household pots washed themselves, and a blanket was knitted without any person attached. With a flick of a wand, Molly Weasley used a non-verbal spell to take care of the household chores, which was exactly how Mary did it. In the Wizarding World, the magic folk are particularly cautious about not being seen by the Muggles. Magic is conducted outside of the school and in public is considered strictly forbidden. The offenders who were caught doing such a thing could ultimately face some jail time in Azkaban prison, which is the adult consequence. Students face a lighter sentence, like expulsion from their magic school. Even though we see Mary perform magic in front of the children, she's rather hesitant to do the same thing in public. This is noticed in one scene when Bert, the chimney sweeper, tells her, "Now's the time, Mary Poppins, no one's looking." To which she responds, "I have no intention of making a spectacle of myself, thank you." She also goes on to encourage the children not to speak of their adventures, and denies that such things had ever taken place, such as saying, quote, "A respectable person like me in a horse race? How dare you suggest a thing?" From magical mirrors and cleaning spells to the unusual and extraordinary umbrellas to spells that remove some unwanted guests and travel to new worlds, all points to the theory that Mary Poppins is from the Wizarding World of Harry Potter. Back in 2001, one of the most iconic computer-animated films was released, Monsters, Inc., and it takes us into the world of monsters, where each one of us heads into a children's bedroom to collect some screams. But when one of the characters heads back into one of these rooms, he finds a little girl, Boo, who starts playing with his tail. That monster was James Sullivan, who's often accompanied by his friend Mike Wazowski. He's usually faced with his rival, a scaly lizard named Randall. Other characters include Roz the Slug, Celia, Henry Watermoose III, and an orange fellow named George Sanderson. The movie was loved by many and was eventually awarded its very own set of conspiracy theories. Olive Branch 99 took to Reddit asking if Boo has a brother, and added a screenshot from a scene in the film where Mike was holding up a scare report. The picture showed a file with an image of a child that resembled Boo named Albert. It was noted here that he was afraid of snakes. It was clarified that the animators had merely reused Boo's face various times. While the theory didn't have much supporting evidence, the question remained, why couldn't she have a brother? Another conspiracy theory suggests a connection between Boo and the Incredibles. It's believed that Violet is the older version of Boo. She has dark hair and isn't afraid of heights. It's also elaborated that Sully had initially been astounded as to how quickly the girl was to hide as though she had telekinesis powers. She was too young at that time to understand her powers and how they work. She'd only be able to use them when she was happy and calm, like Violet. This may explain why she doesn't use the powers when she becomes afraid during Sully's child-scaring demonstration. She also didn't use them when Randall was around. Evidence for this theory can be found in Jack Jack, also from The Incredibles, when he's still figuring out his power and shapeshifts at random. And like many other cartoon conspiracy theories, Monsters, Inc. was set in an apocalyptic time. The human world is not the real world or another world, but is instead the past. The doors are really just time travel machines. Supposed evidence for this can be found in Toy Story 3, when the Monsters, Inc. character makes a quick cameo at the daycare. She was holding a blue kitty. Kitty was the affectionate name she gave to Sully. This was an indication that she still remembered him, or was at least in contact. At the end of Monsters, Inc., Sully fixed the door, which could mean that they had consistent contact after that. It would also correlate with the conspiracy that it was set in the future, and Boo was in the past. If Boo or Violet could time travel to the future through that door, she would have access to knowledge of an advanced time, meaning that she would also be advanced for her timeline. This theory would then branch off to the Boo is the Witch from Brave conspiracy. Brave takes us on a journey of a vibrant red-haired princess named Merida, who's contacted by the witch using little blue wisps. The witch does carpentry, and Sully is even carved in the shop. She can also change her shop into a lair by walking through the door, similar to the idea behind the doors in Monsters, Inc. The theory is that Boo came from the future, right back to the time of Brave. After Merida meets the witch, the hut vanishes after the door is closed. Again, this is similar to that of the doors that the monsters travel through to get into the rooms of children. Alternatively, Violet, the older version of Boo, may use her force fields to make the hut invisible. But what's the reason that she goes back to that era? According to the theory, if the character wants to learn time travel, she needs to use as much magic as possible. So she went back to the wisps. It's also here that she finds that wood is an important source of energy, as seen in Bug's life, and as the beginning of life in WALL-E, as well as the doors in Monsters, Inc., which are wooden as opposed to metallic banishment doors. Aladdin is a 1992 animated comedy fantasy action-adventure film made by Walt Disney Feature Animation. The movie was inspired by Aladdin and the Magic Lamp from the Book of 1001 Nights. The film follows the life of a young street dweller who lives in the Agrabah Kingdom and is helped by a shape-shifting genie to win over Princess Jasmine's heart. But the villain, Jafar, the Sultan's advisor, plots to take Genie and use him to take over the kingdom. Conspiracy theorists, though, believe that the entire movie is actually set in the future. It was explained in one scene that Genie says that Aladdin's clothes are so 3rd century. But Genie has been in the lamp for 10,000 years, so how could he know about fashion trends? This means that the latest he could have been trapped in the lamp was the 3rd century. If he'd been trapped for those 10,000 years, that would have placed the years somewhere around 10,300 AD. It's based on this idea that it's led theorists to conclude that it takes place in the post-apocalyptic future, where Arad and some Greek cultures have survived. The theory posits that the kingdom had been the center of a great war. Some fantastic creations have also been left behind by previous civilizations, such as a flying carpet or some genetically engineered parrots that cannot just mimic human speech, but can also comprehend it. These creations are considered to be magical or are just taken for granted by the locals, and the genie may prove this theory when he refers to ancient celebrities like Jack Nicholson or Groucho Marx. Supporting this conspiracy even more are the video games that have been made based on the movie. It's also been pointed out that in Aladdin's Cave of Wonders, a strange monolith looks similar to the Nintendo Wii. The conspiracies don't end there either. Some have suggested that the merchant trying to sell the lamp may even be the genie himself in human form. A branch off from this idea is that the merchant made the story up just to sell the lamp, in which case the movie was just playing out in his head. Lilo and Stitch is set in Hawaii and follows the life of Lilo, a lonely girl raised by her sister Nani. When going to an animal shelter, Lilo meets Stitch, who she believed was a dog but is actually an alien creature. The alleged social services agent, Cobra Bubbles, routinely checks up on the two sisters. Nani also has a partner named David. The movie is pretty straightforward and is quite lighthearted as far as Disney movies go. But the strange circumstances that the characters find themselves in still allow room for some incredible conspiracy theories. A Reddit forum serves as a goldmine for such theories. It's known that both sisters ended up as orphans after the passing of their parents, who'd been in a car accident. A Reddit user, though, believes that they'd passed away for a different reason. They suggest that the parents were CIA agents who'd met their demise during service, and the Redditor brings with him some compelling evidence. It starts with Cobra Bubbles, who's seen wearing a suit and tie, carrying a briefcase, and wearing dark sunglasses. He doesn't quite look like the social service worker that one would expect, and this is because he's actually a CIA agent. In the movie, he even revealed that he was a CIA agent who worked on the Roswell UFO incident. We've been lied to believe that a Secret Service agent who was involved in alien contact just left the whole life behind to become a social service worker instead. According to the conspiracy, Bubbles may have been close friends with Nani and Lilo's parents and promised them that he would look after the girls upon their passing. The evidence doesn't end there. According to the same Reddit user, Lilo displays an obsession with photographing people around the island, which may indicate that her father had taken her along on a low-risk surveillance operation, using her as a cover story. It's thought that the target of this operation may have been an overweight person, since Lilo generally snaps pictures of such people. This conspiracy could also explain the odd variety of books that can be found in the girl's room. These include road maps of Iowa, oyster farming, practical voodoo, and fire eating for fun and profit. This may indicate that her father had all these books on various topics for his overseas undercover assignments. Another odd theory relates to Pudge, the peanut butter sandwich-loving fish. Lilo constantly feeds the fish a peanut butter sandwich and explains that she does this because he controls the weather. It was theorized that the reason she believes this is because her parents' car accident had been during a rainstorm. Lilo thinks that if she appeases Pudge, then he'll save Nani from a similar fate. Another conspiracy about Pudge is that he's another one of the experiments, such as the one that created Stitch. Others believe that the beloved blue alien is actually a cyborg. One indication of this is that he can think faster than a supercomputer and can lift 3,001 times his weight. Finding Nemo, a classic Disney Pixar cartoon, was released in 2003. The movie takes place in the colorful waters of the Great Barrier Reef and follows the life of Marlin, who lives in a secluded anemone with his son. He struggles to protect his son, who's eager to explore and ends up being taken far away from home and placed into the fish tank of a dentist's office. Marlin becomes a hero and embarks on a journey to rescue his son. He's also helped by his newfound friend, Dory, who has short-term memory loss. But the father's life prior to Nemo's birth was nothing short of tragic. Just after Coral, his wife, had laid her eggs, a hungry barracuda attacked her. Nemo and Marlin were the only survivors. This traumatic past paved the way for an ocean of conspiracy theories. One theory suggests that the unhatched fry was actually devoured by Coral and not by the barracuda. Female clownfish are bigger and more willing to eat their young. There was an idea that a barracuda would probably not choose a clownfish as a snack. To deal with the loss of his children and the sudden craze of his wife, Marlin makes up the story about the predator fish. The father also made up Nemo, and the theorists point out that the name is actually in the ancient Latin language, which means nobody. A branch of this theory, without the part about Coral, is that Nemo didn't exist at all. The fans explained that the name of the movie actually translates to finding no one or finding nobody. Theorists rationalized this as a possible explanation for the blue tag sidekick's memory loss. Her memory loss makes Dory such an excellent friend to Marlin because she can't remember that Nemo's not real. One TikToker added that clownfish are known to fight among themselves and even end the lives of another. They theorized that Marlin had actually taken the lives of both Nemo and Coral and subsequently imagined the story about the barracuda. It's also thought that the movie itself represents the 5 stages of grief. While the idea of the 5 stages has been rethought, During the time of the conspiracy theory, the stages included denial, anger, bargaining, despair, and eventually acceptance. The denial is shown when Marlin chases after the boat that had captured his son, yelling "no, no, no, no" in the open air as he pokes his head out of the waves, trying to see which direction the boat had gone. The anger reveals itself when he loses his temper with Dory, and is also noted that he bargains with various sea creatures. The despair aspect is quite evident throughout the movie, and the acceptance comes when he decides to give up and head home until Dory comes in saying that she found Nemo. The way the father raised his son also supports this conspiracy theory. He doesn't let Nemo go to school, representing denial. He becomes enraged when he swims too far, and he bargains with him to try and get him to come back from the boat. The absent-minded Dory also serves as a symbol of the grieving father's consciousness, guiding him through the whole process, supported by the fact that clownfish are among the few animals that experience the phenomenon of sequential hermaphroditism. Number 10. The germ theory denialism is the impression by conspiracy theorists that germs do not exist, or that they don't cause diseases, rendering vaccines useless. In the 19th century, Louis Pasteur brought about the theory that germs can cause disease. After this proposal, he and Florence Nightingale were engaged in a serious debate. She proposed the environmental theory, which led to her hospital being designed with ventilated wards, with a whole lot of sunlight and cleanliness practices for both the patients and their environment. In essence, the two had a similar idea. Then, when John Snow, the founder of epidemiology, claimed that cholera was waterborne, he encouraged the idea of microscopic organisms entering the body and being transferred from one person to another. Both of these theories are true today. Both environmental factors and organisms that we can't see play a role in viral diseases. But there are still people today who do not believe in the germ theory. It's due to this belief that some members of our society refuse to vaccinate their children and believe that a healthy way of living is all that's needed. The conspiracy that germs don't cause or spread disease also shows up in the most unsubtle of ways. For example, in 1847, Dr. Semmelweis discovered that washing one's hands with a sterile detergent stopped infant fatalities from childbed fever by 10-fold. Today, we find that his theory was correct, but in 2015, the Center for Disease Control discovered that there's only a 40% compliance with hand-washing protocols in hospital staff. The anti-vaccine culture is against the idea that vaccines work in disease prevention, but they often don't go as far as germ theory denialism. But there is a percentage of them who do. One notable member following the denialism theory is Bill Maher, a comedian and the host of Real Time with Bill Maher. In 2005, he stepped into the limelight after clearly showing his stance on germs and disease. Aside from his anti-vaccination views, Maher also flirted with the idea of the germ theory denialism, as well as HIV and AIDS denialism. These conspiracies go into the more extreme big pharma ideas. Believers of the theory suggest that the germ theory is nothing more than the bigger pharmaceutical companies trying to profit by misleading the public. It was in 2005 that Maher appeared on Larry King Live, stating that he wasn't into Western medicine when the topic of the flu vaccine came up. He also claimed that the whole idea of vaccines, germs, and the spreading of disease was nothing more than a scare tactic. Maher suggested that getting this particular vaccination was one of the worst things anyone could do. He claimed that the medicine actually contains mercury. He told King that if he had the flu vaccine for 5 years in a row, then he's 10 times more likely to get Alzheimer's disease. The germ denialism theory also goes as far as blaming autism on vaccines, whereas the anti-vaccination culture suggests that these supposedly unnecessary medications are the leading cause of autism. But there still exists no evidence to back up such claims. The pseudo-scientific and alternative health societies hold germ denialism conspiracies. Followers of the theory argue that germs are not causing disease, but are rather a symptom of disease. But over 100 years of experimental, clinical, and observational evidence prove otherwise. Number 9. The Malthusian theory was set forth by a British economist named Thomas Robert Malthus. He made a strange yet plausible suggestion about population growth, which he would later outline in his 1798 book called An Essay on the Principle of Population. In short, the theory states that with the technological advances that we've made over the centuries, we're able to increase food and resources for the population. But according to Thomas, this would only enable population growth, which in turn reduces the available resources back to its original level. Amidst preaching sermons and visiting members of his community, Thomas would also ponder the ultimate destruction of our society as a whole. He established his theory after assessing the amount of resources and the rate of population growth. Overstraining the environment appears to not only be a modern concern. The Malthusian theory states that the population grows geometrically. It was posited that the population would double in 25 years, but food supply only increases in an arithmetic progression, at a much slower rate or at a specific point in time. This set forth the idea that food would be limited in a couple of years. In his world-famous essay, he established a few points. One of them was that food is a necessity for sustaining life. He also determined that reproducing was a constant pattern. This particular theorist existed during the time of the Industrial Revolution, when a population boom was noted, due to two contributing factors. The first was the increase in birth rate, and the second was that the mortality rate was dropping due to the new introduction of medicine. Even though the introduction of medications and vaccines was a breakthrough for society, Thomas saw its flaws. Vaccines meant that people were living longer, and this, according to him, could be catastrophic. Based on his observations, the reproductive rate pattern, and the food demand, he proclaimed that Earth would soon run out of food. This would ultimately lead to famines, wars, and plagues. This would be a way, according to him, of leveling out the increase in population and the availability of food and other resources. Thomas's solution to this theory was that the increasing population had to be stopped, or at least slowed down. And as we can clearly see, the Malthusian theory was wrong. At the time that this essay was published back in the late 1700s, there were around 1 billion people on the planet, and today we're in the vicinity of 8 billion, and so far we have enough food, resources, and supplies. Thomas predicted that in just a few short years, we would plummet into a cycle of misery and an apocalyptic end. The reason that he was wrong, though, was due to an unforeseen factor: new technology. This new technology enabled us to keep up with the increase in supply and demand, saving humanity as we know it and allowing further population growth. Thomas's conclusion became outdated, and even when he produced the idea, he was met with a variety of criticisms. At various times, food and resource production had increased more than the population had. Number 8. The Flat Earth Theory is a prominent conspiracy in today's society. It's been around for quite some time, claiming that the Earth is actually flat and not round, as we've been made to believe. From this theory, many others have stemmed, such as the Big Iron Theory, which states that the Earth was in fact round until a big iron came out of space and flattened it. Another theory connected to it refers to the flat Earth forests. According to this theory, every mountain that adorns our planet is actually the ancient petrified stumps of gigantic trees that once stood there. This theory came about in 2016, when a YouTuber initiated the conspiracy in a video called "There Are No Forests on Flat Earth, Wake Up." And in just an instance, the worldview of thousands flipped around. Adding to their belief that the Earth is just a flat disk with the Arctic at its center is that what we know as forests are really just a tiny remnant of this ancient world. This ancient world was adorned with trees with trunks as large as mountains. Believers of this theory draw comparisons between today's mountain ranges and old tree stumps with their jagged looks, despite being a branch off of the old flat Earth theory and one that was posited by flat earthers. The idea actually seemed to resonate with the community. While the general idea of the Earth being flat is frowned upon, and the idea of these ancient forests was met with skepticism, it's still a theory that many had taken to. The supposed fact that the theorist presented did not sway the minds of the masses and was deemed illogical, but it was one of the few theories that was based on genuine scientific curiosity. This very recent idea would soon become the topic of over 10,000 video responses, in which podcasters and YouTubers reacted to the idea, had roundtable discussions, or debunked the conspiracy. The no forests flat Earth tree theory plays out like this. What we call forests today are actually just some small bushes, the remains of an ecologically rich world that once held trees that stretched 40 miles tall. Evidence for this idea can be found in the stumps they supposedly left behind, such as the flat-top mountains, which allude to behemoth trees that were slain by incredible machines of immense size. The uneven and jagged mountain ranges follow the same path as that of a severed stump of a tree that was knocked over by a calamity. This conspiracy paints a picture that Earth isn't made of uneven rock, but that it's formed from the rubble of an old sacred forest. Theorists posit that the quarry mines and river valleys we see today are remnants of trees that were carved out by big machines. Each of these ideas, though, is not without some photographic evidence. Side-by-side pictures of mountain areas and tree stumps have popped up. One prominent example of this theory is the Devil's Tower, which can be found in Wyoming. This incredible mountain bears a striking resemblance to the trunk of a tree, and even has marks like bark traveling up. At the top of this mountain, the earth holds circular cracks, like one would expect from a chopped tree. This theory came up again in 2019, when one man who was surveying trees for an invasive beetle was told that forests don't exist. He learned that the believers of the flat earth theory don't think trees are real, and that no trees are left. He also discovered that apparently the geological formations we see today are just stumps of ancient growths. Aside from the Devil's Tower, there's also the Giant's Causeway on Northern Ireland and Uluru in Australia. According to the 2016 video, which has since been removed, there was a cataclysmic event that destroyed the biosphere and took the trees along with it. But the entirety of the flat earth theory and the idea that mountains are old stumps has already been scientifically disproven. Number 7. If you hang around on the internet for long enough, you may come across a variety of strange things. There are a number of conspiracy theories in circulation day in and day out. One such theory was presented on various social media platforms, claiming that jet fuel is a hoax. The theory is that aircraft like passenger planes and jets don't use fuel to fly, but actually use oxygen. It isn't certain where this idea began, but many conspiracy believers immediately hopped on the idea and began to spread the news. A Twitter user said the following in a post, saying, quote, "Take a good look at how thin those wings are, and tell me they're fuel tanks. Research jet fuel hoax. How about free atmospheric energy and compressed air?" According to this outlandish conspiracy theory, for jets and planes to fly about in the air, their engines need only compressed air, which will combust, allowing them to operate with no fuel required at all. While it may look like something magical is going on when we see these kinds of aircraft in the sky, there are simply no supernatural events taking place there. But according to this same Twitter user, a Boeing holding 100,000 liters of explosive fuel, 175,000 pounds in each wing, is absolutely impossible. He goes on to say that these crafts are not just burning fuel across the sky, and tells us to have a look at the cross-section of a jet engine, where we may find a series of fans compressing air. Aside from the scientific errors in this conspiracy, there are also logical issues. To ensure that this jet fuel hoax fools the masses, every single worker at every single airline would have to play into it. This includes the major carriers, private carriers, and isolated airlines. Each of these would need to be engaged in this hoax for it to keep going. In order to keep up with the ruse, the airlines would need to purchase real jet fuel and not use it. After supposedly dumping the pricey substance in a lake nearby, every participant would need to hide their involvement. If one person accidentally revealed this hoax, the whole plan would be out of the bag. A Facebook user from Australia shared a post in a public Facebook group containing over 85,000 members about this theory, stating the following, saying, quote, "Today, 50% of the price of a plane ticket is to pay for the fuel required. But the truth is that commercial airlines run roughly on 90% compressed air, not jet fuel." Victor Schoberger discovered the technology of using compressed air to propel a turbine in the 1940s. This post gained comments like, "I've known this for years. They basically only use fuel for takeoff and landing." This conspiracy paints the picture that airline users are paying an inflated price for fuel to have the plane run on nothing more than air. One video was published on YouTube in 2018 and has been viewed over 360 times. The caption says, quote, "Look at the deception being perpetrated by the aircraft manufacturers and airlines charging for fuel they don't use." This specific video explains that only a little bit of fuel is being used. This small amount of fuel is being used to speed up the engine before the compressed air takes over. Number 6. Furby. Is it a talking toy or a secret spy? In October of 1998, the soft children's toy known as Furby was brought to the public and gained instant attention. In just a few months, 1.8 million of them were sold. In 1999, a special edition of Millennium Furby was released. These toys could show feelings and reactions and were motorized. Furby soon became Tiger Electronics' most famous toy. But the positive fame didn't last long before being replaced by a growing sense of fear. The fear stemmed from the National Security Agency headquarters of the United States. The agency banned the toy, accusing it of being a Chinese-manufactured spy. According to believers in the theory, manufacturers bugged electronic contraptions for eavesdropping purposes. The robotic creatures that responded to physical touch with coos and gibberish were banned for their supposed internal recording devices, which could repeat sensitive information to the enemy. The NSA had even circulated an internal memo that reminded staff that recording devices of any type were not allowed. Recording devices included items such as computers or phones, and apparently also Furbies. But there was one issue with their sudden repulsion of the toy. They weren't equipped with a recording device at all. According to the owner of Tiger Electronics, Roger Schiffman, Furby has no ability whatsoever to record. The creator of the toy, Dave Hampton, even demonstrated that the microphone that it held inside couldn't record sounds. It was able to repeat things back to its owner, but when it was played back, only a repetitive beat could be made out. It couldn't play back any waveforms or words at all. In a time where we have eavesdropping devices right by our sides throughout the entirety of the day and night, it may seem silly to be afraid of a fuzzy child's toy. That being said though, surveillance capitalism is real, and electronic users of today are having their personal information mined and sold on a regular basis. This fear-fueled conspiracy theory, though, was due to a misconception of the words that the Furby could repeat. The NSA supported their hysteria by stating that these creatures could learn language, and due to this meant that they must be equipped with an internal recording device. Then another theory began to circulate. Furbies could launch spacecraft. Despite a teddy bear autopsy and the NSA headquarters renouncing their ban, the fear had not subsided. At one point, a woman in Waldorf received an ominous package at her front door. She called the sheriff's office and they found that the package had a return address for an out-of-town location that the resident didn't recognize. From the unopened package, an ominous beeping and humming was heard, and upon opening it, inside was nothing more than a Furby. Eventually, the fears and conspiracies about the toy began to recede, but so did its popularity. Not long after, the security headquarters confirmed that Furby was in fact not a spy after all. Number 5. One incredibly frustrated geology enthusiast brought this theory to the attention of the geology community through a Reddit post. Hi Noah took to the subreddit Geology, stating that they discovered a whole section of conspirators who believe that some rocks and mountains are really the remains of giant humanoids, animals, or even mythical creatures. They pointed to one particular channel called Mud Fossil University, which has made some pretty peculiar claims about dragon remains in mountains and human footprints from the Triassic period. The conspiracy here is that every rock is actually a fossil, either being the remains of a person or some beast that was either real or mythological. The person behind most of these incredible claims is a man who identifies himself as Roger. Roger posts videos that show him examining some rocks or stones with a screen showing the X-rays of a person or animal. He then proceeds to claim that one specific stone is one specific bone in the X-ray. Of course, though, there are many flaws in this claim, which is mostly that none of the rock clumps even slightly resemble the skeletal makeup. He also claims to have CAT scans as well as DNA on fossilized giants. Believers of the conspiracy that the large geological structures are just fossils point to various formations and mountains that resemble animals. This is a similar theory to that of the flat Earth forest. Both of these ideas posit that just because something resembles an entirely different thing means that it must be the same thing. Another YouTuber and believer in this theory that giant animals once roamed the Earth uploaded several parts of a series suggesting proof that titans existed. Here, he points out various mud fossils, such as the ones on the coast of eastern Spain. The mountain he refers to has been dubbed the Elephant. He points out that the formation could be the remains of a very big elephant with a rounded head and the slope of its back. Attaching to the head is a plateau that looks very much like a trunk, which leads theorists to conclude that this must be the remains of a giant elephant beast that's been fossilized and preserved in the earth, evading the eyes of various scientific fields and experts. Another YouTuber named Nautilus News made use of Google Earth to find his mud fossils, which included not just land formations but also entire islands. In one area, he refers to a mountain range that appears to have the look of a dragon. It has a dragon-shaped head adorned with a crown of spikes and a snake-like body that travels across the area. Of course, there's little evidence in the form of DNA, scientific research, and the existence of immense creatures to support the theory that mountain ranges, whole islands, and massive rocks are the remains of such beasts. Number 4. The celebrity world is vast, entertaining, dramatic, and mysterious, and even secretive. Conspiracy theories about each famous individual abound. It could take the form of Illuminati involvement, satanic worship, fake disappearances, staged passings, and cloning. The idea of supposed celebrity cloning isn't very new. This suggestion falls in with Beyoncé, Paul McCartney, Avril Lavigne, and Miley Cyrus. And just when you thought you'd heard it all, Kanye West was thrown straight into the mix. The Telegraph titled their article, "Has Kanye West Been Cloned?" Inside the internet's wildest conspiracy theory. Various online rumors circulate about certain celebrities being clones of the original, and Kanye happens to be the newest addition to the celebrity clone club. A video of the musician and his new wife, Bianca Censori, made its way to YouTube. It showed the new couple being followed around by paparazzi while they were attempting to buy some ice cream in Los Angeles. One viewer commented under the video, stating that Kanye looks and acts so much different. He also claimed that he doesn't think that the man in the video is even Kanye at all. A Reddit thread expressed concerns for the celebrity as well, who's been described as out of shape and wandering across Milan without shoes on. They argued that this is evidence supporting the idea that the troubled rapper is an entirely different person. Theories like this all lead back to a common denominator, a shadowy organization, the Illuminati. Many suggest that this secret society has been replacing most of our beloved singers, actors, and artists. Allegedly, this society makes mind-altered clones of them easier to control. Other theorists have gone as far as suggesting that the wealthy, famous individuals themselves are deceptively investing in these clones to preserve themselves using top-secret human cloning programs. While it may seem like a narrative from Black Mirror, theorists argue that this is the easiest way to explain why and how celebrities look and act differently after disappearing from the spotlight and re-emerging. The world of fandoms and celebrity endorsement advertising has led to such an evolved status that the public struggles to view these people as human beings at all, whose appearances change over time due to age and other environmental factors. This conspiracy further echoes the old stories of doppelgangers in Germanic folklore, which speaks of an evil twin. Another article announced that Kanye West is not even real. It alludes to the conspiracy theory that did the rounds on TikTok as well, this time taking it just one step further. While acknowledging the idea that he was a clone, they also suggested that Kanye was most certainly a god. This celebrity had disappeared from the public for a bit after the controversial outburst did the rounds on Twitter, which led the rapper to get canceled, banned, and ostracized. We'd heard and seen very little of the man until quite recently when Travis Scott welcomed a figure on stage during a concert in Rome. It was mostly accepted that the man who began rapping "Praise God" on the microphone was indeed Kanye, but purists believe otherwise. They asked questions like, is that the real Kanye West? Bringing about certain doubt that the man on stage and the one we've been seeing isn't the rapper at all. Theorists have even taken to calling this alleged clone Ye. Another video circulated as well, This time, Orlando Bloom was indicating that the rapper isn't who we think. He refers to a tall and short Kanye and indicates that it's as though these two copies are fighting for center stage. But one of the things that Orlando said really grabbed people's attention. It was this question, do you guys realize how there's a taller Kanye and a shorter Kanye? The same theory also made its way to Twitter, where Smallzy stated that they just read a conspiracy theory that Kanye had passed away, and that this new blonde-haired Kanye was really just a clone. Evidence for this alleged cloning is attributed to the change in nose and mouth shapes. He's also missing tattoos that he once had. Solidifying this idea is the fact that the rapper even said that he'd been cloned during one performance. Number 3. Now we get to an even more odd theory called the human zoo theory. This conspiracy ties in with the Fermi paradox. The Fermi paradox asks the question, where are the aliens? It seeks the answer to the question of where in the universe these extraterrestrial beings are hiding. This paradox argued that we may have once been visited by intelligent aliens who have since left and have either chosen not to visit us, we're unable to observe them, or they can't reach us due to the physical difficulties like biology and engineering aspects. One solution to the Fermi paradox is that of the human zoo theory. As the name suggests, theorists imagine a scenario that depicts Earth as a zoo, or perhaps some sort of natural reserve. This theory posits that the extraterrestrial life forms prefer to view and observe us through a closed system, or perhaps they choose not to interfere with our lives, technology, or our culture for pure ethical reasoning. The idea of the human zoo has been a subject of sci-fi cosmology, but John Ball, the MIT radio astronomer, is credited with laying it out back in 1973. However, Ball's theory differs slightly. He believes that the aliens aren't talking to us in this enclosed human zoo because we're part of an ongoing experiment that they're conducting. Interfering with us would render their efforts inconclusive. In 1978, William Newman and Carl Sagan explained that it would be entirely impossible to predict the aims and beliefs of a hypothetical society. Particle physicist Daniel Whiteson pointed out that we have to be more careful about anthropocentrism and avoid it. Anthropocentrism is the tendency in which we assume that humans are the center of cosmic concerns, but proving or disproving this conspiracy requires intense efforts. We would need to detect alien communications, and if we can receive signals or messages from cosmo-civilizations, only then can we challenge the idea that they're deliberately isolating us and intentionally avoiding communication. Most scientists, though, do find that the human zoo hypothesis is extremely unlikely and points to the anthropocentric view. They suggest that it would be quite improbable for such a large and intricate galactic theory to even exist, just to observe the human race without any interference. Conspiracy theorists and alien enthusiasts, however, stand firm in suggestions like these. They also propose that this could be justification for an activity known as METI. METI is short for Messaging Extraterrestrial Intelligence. Those who practice this activity are sending radio signals off into space with the hopes of provoking a response. And given that we haven't received one yet, the human zoo hypothesis and the intentional lack of communication come into play as a possible answer as to why. The entire enterprise was discussed during a meeting with researchers. One researcher and the president of METI International, Douglas Vakach, invoked the conspiracy as a plausible form of justification. He stated that all efforts to find a signal from outer space have been unsuccessful, for the reason that the extraterrestrials are keeping their distance. He also put forth the argument that this one-way communication may change. If a zoo animal starts to bark through the bars, then those on the other side would be prompted to respond. But for now, though, we'll sit idly and patiently as we await that very signal that confirms the existence of alien civilizations. If this is confirmed, a new problem may arise. After all, many humans may not be happy that they've been the subject of alien experimentation, or that they're being kept in a cage like a zoo animal. Number 2. This theory refers to the 1990 classic Home Alone and the main character, the young Kevin McAllister. It also relates to Jigsaw, John Kramer from the Saw movie franchise. But how could these two completely different movies connect? Well, according to one theorist, Kevin McAllister grew up to become John Kramer, or Jigsaw. It's a pretty out there theory, but the theorists have some convincing evidence to support this idea, which can be found in both Home Alone and Home Alone 2, Lost in New York. In both of these movies, Kevin displays some pretty clear out-of-control anger issues, a liking for some violent fantasies, and a viewer tendency that is combined with the fetish for recording a video. The theory runs through the personality traits that the young boy exhibits. Firstly, they point out that he's obsessed or fascinated with the next-door neighbor, Old Man Marley, after learning that he may be the South Bend shovel slayer. Then there was the violent attack he carried out on Buzz, and how he made the pizza delivery man believe he was going to be fired at. In the second movie, Kevin makes a video of his uncle in the shower, and later uses it to frighten hotel staff. He also regularly experiences some very realistic visual and auditory hallucinations, such as when he sees the basement furnace as a fiery mod monster. This particular aspect is a symptom of psychosis, and would later become crucial to his methodology as Jigsaw. None of the behaviors that Kevin portrays are those of a regular child. The similarities between the two characters are also obvious, such as Kevin's very intricate, pathologically designed home defense mechanics, and Jigsaw's homicidal traps. One prominent piece of supporting evidence for this theory can be found in the traumatizing furnace monster that the child had seen. This would later influence one of the devices that Jigsaw used on Amanda in Saw. Both contraptions look coincidentally similar. It's also notable that many of Kevin's creations are directly triggered by the victims themselves, which is exactly how Jigsaw's traps work. Just like the homicidal maniac, Kevin is also incredibly inventive and makes use of sadistic devices. Jigsaw was once a civil engineer and a toy maker, which shows the same creativity and imagination as the boy. It seems that falling into these two lines of work would be an expected choice for Kevin. Adding credence to this theorized similarity is that he also displayed a fascination for a toy store in New York. Aside from these similarities, there's one thing that's most striking. This is the fact that they're both physically incompatible. This means that the young boy could have grown up to resemble Jigsaw, who's played by Tobin Bell. Both have straight blonde hair with vibrant blue eyes, while skeptics point out that Kevin was a sweet boy and that Jigsaw was a maniac. The Saw movies do build on the idea that he wasn't always like that. While this theory is certainly entertaining and intriguing, it can't be said if he could realistically grow up to become Jigsaw. For now, many movie lovers would like to leave the memory of Kevin McAllister exactly where it is. Number 1. Over just a few years, we've heard the stories of the enigmatic disappearances of hikers and adventurers who mysteriously vanish into thin air in national parks that are littered across the globe. Often, these people disappear without any trace of them ever being found. Many theories come about trying to explain these disappearances. One such theory speaks of feral people in our national parks. The idea of these feral people can be found throughout history in the form of folklore, conspiracies, and the media. While our world's national parks claim that there's no evidence to suggest that there are clans of feral people living in the woods, theorists believe otherwise. In fact, the national park boards have stated that the disappearances are actually the works of old age, injury, and poor navigation skills. Theorists point to the stories of documented cases where forest wanderers claim to have encountered such people. And when it comes to the missing 411, they believe that these groups of forest dwellers may be directly responsible. But according to the parks, there are no official reports, documentation, or digital captures of these supposed ferals. They believe that the theories may have been formulated in response to fear of strange places. While this conspiracy theory has been doing the rounds for quite some time, it recently reappeared after the 6th episode of American Horror Story, titled Feral. This posits the idea that the disappearances that occurred in the national parks weren't caused by injury, poor navigation, coyotes, or bears, but rather by another form of dangerous wildlife that takes on a more human appearance. The story of Dennis Martin is reminiscent of the feral human legend. It's claimed that a bare footprint was discovered in the dirt where he disappeared, one that's been attributed to a wild man. Similar stories have come about since the 1960s, when adventurers suddenly went off course and disappeared into the foliage. While some re-emerged to tell the story of uncivilized clans, others never made it out. Stories like these only fuel the rumors of the existence of the feral people. Theorists attribute the misdirection and subsequent vanishing to the idea that the people are being chased by others and lost their way. Law enforcement and rangers still point out that there's no evidence to support such claims, but theorists have a counter to this. They claim that if people that we know existed disappear and don't reappear, then there wouldn't be any evidence to collect anyway. In 2021, conspiracy theories were repopularized when they were mentioned on the internet. It's claimed that these populations of feral and cannibalistic people reside in the national parks of America, and they're the ones directly responsible for the disappearances of park visitors. Upon closer examination, though, it soon becomes clear just exactly where the conspiracy came from. It appears to be a reflection of American and Canadian folklore. The idea that there are dangerous humanoids lurking in the forests has been passed down through the generations. The legend of the Wendigo and the stories of the Skinwalkers all come together to ignite the conspiracy that there may be things hiding in the forest that we don't know about. Critics of the idea about these forest dwellers state that there's a more classical root that demonizes the people of the Appalachian Mountains. These critics believe that those of a higher economic standard have spread these rumors and conjured up these theories to degrade a certain culture. A culture that rebels against authority and practices the activity of moonshining. These two activities together also have their hand in the spark of the conspiracy theory that there exists an uncivilized group in the national parks that's kidnapping strangers for an unknown gain. A conspiracy that greatly lacks any supporting evidence. One that's built on the grounds of folklore and a classist, stereotypical outlook. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But my name is Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.